What's up, my wizards? It's Dev, SBMTG. We like magic, and today I got a bunch of Rivals of Ixalan spoilers to go through. It's officially day 2 of real, actual Mothership spoilers, and we got 16 cards to look at since the last time you saw me. So I think it's best we just go ahead and get right into it so we can save a little bit of time. So there's a lot to talk about today. Well, there were 2 cards previewed last night that weren't previewed in time to make yesterday's video. So I'm going to open up with both of those cards today. The first of which is Elinda, the Dusk Rose. This is 4 mana, 2, a white, and a black for a 1/1 legendary vampire knight with lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Elinda. And when Elinda dies, you create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Elinda's power. Well, the spike in me just sort of immediately gut checks any positive reaction that I might want to have to this card. You know, 4 mana 1/1s have a really hard time seeing play in Standard, and this one just requires an awful lot of setup. You know, 2-3 things at least have to die before this is a decent rate. Or at least a good enough rate for Standard. And in the Vampire deck, we already have Sanctum Seeker as a pretty decent 4-drop. So this is probably just 1 or 2 of status, you know. There are things I don't like about the card, but at the same time, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Hangerback Walker, and that card went under the radar for a while. During preview season at least, and then when the set got released, people tried it out and were like, oh, this is like the best card in the set. You know, it's like this and Baby Jays are the whole reasons to buy into Magic Origins. So just the fact that it's sort of reminiscent in a sideways way of Hangerback Walker makes me want to try this card out. You know, once you do get maybe 2-3 counters on it, it's not bad. You got a decently sized lifelink creature, and if they manage to kill it, then you get like, you know, the pinata busts open, you get a bunch of 1/1 lifelinks. That seems decent. A card that can replace itself with a bunch of tokens, you know, it seems fine. It's sort of an anti-sweeper piece for the Vampires deck. I think that's good, but again, a bunch of stuff has to die before they sweep you. So I don't know, man. By the by, on that train of thought, I've seen some people a little confused as to how this works with sweepers, and yeah, I do think it's a decent anti-sweeper tool, but it doesn't work as well as some people want it to. You know, if you've just got a 1/1 Elinda out and a bunch of other creatures and they hit you with Fumigate, then you'll only get 1 token. She won't see all those other creatures die, get a bunch of counters, and then bust into a board full of tokens. It doesn't work that way. But if you've already got, 3-4 counters on her and they sweep you, then they're staring down a bunch of 1/1 lifelinkers, and they probably don't want to do that either. So I do think this is a pretty good safety valve for sweepers. It's decent insurance, you know, but at the end of the day, I'm just not sure all that comes together to make a 4 mana 1/1 that you have to work for to make it a good rate, you know, a decent card. Here's the other card from last night, and the first of many cards I'm going to have to translate today. Sorry about that, editing dev, but, you know, it's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it. Here's Glorious Destiny. It's 3 mana, 2 and a white for an enchantment with Ascend. As Glorious Day enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1, always. They have vigilance as long as you have the city's blessing. So there's a lot of people calling this bad, and it's not like the best thing ever, but Glorious Anthem was always a decent card. Always Watching was a decent card that literally just left Standard not long ago, and saw a lot of play in a lot of decks. So I'm not sure that I'm ready to just completely write this thing off. You know, it looks fine to me. And unlike Always Watching, by the way, it's obviously easier to cast, so that's something. And it pumps tokens. It pumps tokens. Always Watching did not do that, and that's a big point in its favor, especially in white. You know, you got Anointed Procession and a bunch of cards that revolve around tokens, so something like this could easily see play. And yeah, I know, a lot of tokens have different creature types. Like, let's say you're doing the Vampire Monument deck. You probably wouldn't play this because all the tokens in that deck are very likely going to be warrior tokens from Monument, and all your other creatures are going to be vampires. So I don't know that you'd want to play this in that. You know, it really needs to find a home, but, you know, Tribal White Weenie deck is something that's been around since literally the beginning of Magic history, so shouldn't be too hard to find a place for this. And, you know, it's decent even if you don't have Ascend, but once you do have Ascend, it just becomes a better Always Watching, and in a tribal synergy with nothing but the same creature type, then it's just better than Glorious Anthem even, so I'm not ready to write the card off. I think it's decent. Here's the first card from today. This is Path to Discovery. It's 3 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it explores. I'll want to like this card too. You know, this is another 4 mana thing that I don't quite think is good enough, but I really, really want to like. There's actually a bunch of those today. There's like 7 or 8 4 mana cards in these 16 cards, so get ready for that. But still, this is a card that just does nothing the turn it enters the battlefield, and it's a 4 mana enchantment. I don't really like that. It's probably okay in explore specific decks where you'll get like multiple explorers when you play a creature. You know, you play Seeker Squire, And you get the Explorer from this, and then you get the actual Explorer from Secret Squire or Branch Walker or whatever you're playing. So I think that it's definitely a card that could lead to some real value over just the course of a couple of turns. But is a 4-mana enchantment that doesn't do anything when you play it really worth standard playability? Unless we're talking about Anointed Procession, probably not. Here's the next card, though. This is Shrine Atlasaur right here. It's 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 3/4 dinosaur with neat text. If a source would deal damage to another dinosaur you control, prevent all but one of that damage. Now, in the very early hours of this card being spoiled so far, I've seen some really positive comments to it, but I'm not seeing it, guys. I'm sorry. It's a 5 mana thing with the word another on it. You know, it won't prevent damage to itself. Which I think is really, that's not good. That's definitely points off. I think that it's going to be great in Limited if you're drafting up the dinosaur deck and you got, 8 to 10 dinosaurs. Then I think that that's pretty good, essentially making your dinosaurs almost unkillable in combat and still triggering Enrage, for that matter. Seems like a pretty decent deal, but in Standard, I don't think so, guys. I don't think it does enough for 5 mana. I think that it's 5 freaking mana, too, and you just got better options. Almost no matter what you're building. So even in a deck full of dinosaurs, you can't play 4 Regisaur Alpha and this. If you're building green-white dinosaurs, then I think it might be worth trying out, a 2 or 3 of this, but ultimately I think that it's a little bit more narrow than it actually looks. Hey, here's another vampire to look at. Ooh, it's a 2 mana rare. This better be good. This is Paladin of Atonement. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 1/1 vampire knight. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you lost life last turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Paladin of Atonement. When it dies, you gain life equal to its toughness. Okay, so everybody hates this card. So far, at least, from what I've seen. Although I will say that we have, like, Chef at Dunes. We have that. We also have a Danto Vanguard, which this goes pretty well with. So I'm not ready to say this card is bad. I don't like that it starts as just a 1/1 for your 2 mana investment. I really don't like 2 mana 1/1s as a general, course of action. I'm not a big fan, but this can get bigger over just a couple of turns. If they attack you, then it will get bigger, obviously. Like, if they attack you and you let through their smallest guy, then well, that's counter for your guy. And that can lead to a 4/4, 5/5 dude over the course of the game just getting attacked, right? Not even, and that's not to count things like Chef at Dunes. So I think I might be tentatively a fan. I'm not sure it's going to work out in the end. We're probably going to see better 2-drops for the Vampires deck. As a matter of fact, there's a better 2-drop, perhaps 2 better 2-drops for that deck in this video that you haven't seen yet. But, I definitely think that it might be worth at least giving a try. If for your 2 mana investment, I would imagine it can get pretty big over a game, even if you don't have a Dunes out. But if you do have a Dunes, I think gets to 5/5 quicker than you might think. And if they do manage to kill it, boom, you get all your life back. So I think there's a lot of things to like about this card. Check out this merfolk. This is Seafloor Oracle right here. It's 2 and 2 blue for a 2/3 merfolk wizard with whenever a merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Alright, so I think, this really depends on what plan merfolk ends up in, but I think this is probably a much better 4-drop than Herald of Secret Streams. For the merfolk deck, and it can have some value the turn it comes into play. It can draw you, 1 to 3 cards. That's not bad right there. Can refill your hand in the mid game. Although, merfolk already has a bunch of really good, card advantage. You got merfolk Branch Walker, you got Silvergill Adept, now you got Cumena. So the deck is drawing a bunch of cards. I'm not sure how much they want this at such a hefty price. That deck looks like it's going to run a relatively low curve. So I'm not really sure how many 4-drops the deck wants to play. So I'm not sure, ultimately, if this goes in. But it is an attractive piece at first glance, at least. So it's going to require some testing. I'm not ready to say this is either bad or good. Because it's not either. At least at present. This will definitely have to be messed around with. It's worth playtesting with. I guess that's my evaluation. But here's a merfolk that definitely goes in the merfolk deck. This is Merfolk Mistbinder, another M&M card. It's 2 mana, a blue and a green for a 2/2 merfolk shaman. Other merfolk you control get +1/+1. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I think this card actually goes beyond standard merfolk. This could actually be in the blue-green tropical fish deck in Modern. It's entirely possible. I mean, it's a really, really fragile Anthem effect, but it is an Anthem effect. Which really, end of the day, is exactly what everybody wanted for merfolk. And we all would have taken a 3 mana Anthem effect in Standard. This is a 2 mana Anthem effect. That's crazy. And yeah, the problems are that it's other merfolk you control, meaning that this can get shocked, magma sprayed, whatever. It's super vulnerable to every piece of removal, including Fatal Push. So there are ways where you can swing in thinking that you've got Alpha Strike or whatever, you know, or just a better situation than your opponent, combat-wise, and you swing in, you get blown out by a Fatal Push on this dude. Like, that's my problem with this card, and another Lord that we'll see a little bit later. But that's always the problem with Lords. I just think this one is a little bit more killable than most Lords are, and you have to watch out for that. But, hey, you know, this deck is going to have access to Blossoming Defense, and very likely a copy or two of Dive Down as well. So there's going to be a lot of ways to protect important merfolk, and this is definitely going to be an important merfolk, at least in Standard, if not other formats for that matter. So, really happy to see this. Again, we were all jonesing for a 3-mana Lord, so a 2-mana Lord we will definitely take. And as a matter of fact, this deck is looking really stacked on 2-drops. You know, it might play Metallic Mimic, so there's that. You got to get that out of the way. It's definitely going to play all 4 copies of this. Going to play all 4 Silvergill, all 4 Branch Walker. You know, so that deck has got is really stacked at the 2-drop slot. It's looking better. Got a couple more 2-drops to rifle through here, actually. This is Time Stream Navigator. This is an exciting card. We'll just call it the Doctor, actually. It even looks like a Doctor, kind of, but like from Doctor Who. I shouldn't even have to qualify that, but anyway, this reminds me of a Doctor. It's a 1 and a blue for a 1/1 human pirate wizard with Ascend. You can pay 2 blue, and tap it to put Time Stream Navigator on the bottom of its owner's library and take an extra turn after this one. Activate only if you have the city's blessing. Well, this is not amazing. It's really not amazing, guys. You know, I know that the extra turns are really attractive, but they don't win the game by themselves or anything, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get to this one. You know, Wizards is a fan of printing cards that you have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get extra turns, and I'm just not sure that it's entirely worth like having to have Ascend or anything. But really, the big hoop is having Ascend. So that shouldn't be too hard. But again, I'm a little skeptical. I said this the other day. I'm a little skeptical of getting Ascend in blue. And yeah, you know, you can just combine it with other colors that it's easy to get Ascend with. But I'm just a little bit more wary overall of the Ascend mechanic being playable in blue. So I'm just not 100% sure. The card's extremely fragile, you know. But it's going to be really tough to get that extra turn. And once you do, you actually have to do something with your extra turn. Cards like this are historically nowhere near as good as they appear to be, especially these extra turns on a body that require you to jump through hoops. Can't do it the turn it comes into play. That's a big problem, you know. Having to wait a whole turn for your 1/1 to use its ability is not great. So I'm not a huge fan, but a good positive is that it doesn't exile itself. You know, it gets shuffled back into your library so you can draw it again. You know, that seems better than a lot of these taking extra turn effects. I do like that about it, but end of the day, I think it's probably just going to be lost to time, which is that was not intended to be a pun, but it probably is. I would imagine this card will be quickly and swiftly forgotten, but I mean, that could be a horrible, gross misevaluation, and this card just sees all the play because there's some kind of stupid trick with it. But I'm not seeing it thus far, which leads me to believe the card is not great. Up next, as promised, another 2-drop. This is Starving Paladin. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 3/3 Vampire Knight. Starving Paladin doesn't untap during your untap step. Whenever you gain life, untap Starving Paladin. Alright, so it's a 2 mana 3/3. That's a fantastic rate. And the Vampire deck needs something this aggressive so it can help sort of just brick wall these, you know, mono red aggro decks and stuff. We need something help keep up with them in the early game. And it's not too hard. It's not too hard to gain life, obviously. You know, you've got, you know, Legion's Landing, Gifted Aetherborn, perhaps Bishop's Soldier. I mean, there's a ton of cards in that deck that'll gain you life. And creatures that can tap and untap and tap and untap, you know, more than one time in a given turn can sometimes lead to really interesting combos. It all depends on what else we see in this set, or maybe there's a card in Standard that I'm just not thinking of right now. But this card will probably have to have some kind of cool, like, tertiary interaction if it's actually going to see play in the Standard Vampires deck. That deck needs a really, really, really good 2-drop to be viable. And I think there's a better 2-drop coming up here a little bit later in the list that will probably take priority over this. But again, if there's some kind of cool interaction that, you know, this card has with another card, then it may end up making the cut. Up next is Watery Ambush. This is an enchantment. It costs 3 and a blue, and when it enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 merfolk creature tokens with hexproof. And if you pay its casting cost again, 3 and a blue, target merfolk can't be blocked this turn. Well, the question, I think, with this card is it better to be on this than Deep-Root Waters? Waters is going to create more tokens for you over the course of a game, usually, and this comes into play a turn later than Waters does. And they both, let me put it this way, this does something the turn it enters the battlefield. If you get Deep-Root Waters on curve, it doesn't do anything the turn it enters the battlefield, and it doesn't have, you know, a secondary function on it like making whatever you want unblockable. So I actually don't think this is too terrible, you know, but 2 power on turn 4 is not exciting or anything. That's not a great rate, but at least they have hexproof, and the enchantment does something on subsequent turns. And any card for merfolk that puts multiple tokens or multiple merfolk into play at the price of 1 card is going to be very good when you consider that Cumena is going to be probably the centerpiece to that deck. You need a bunch of merfolk for that deck. So something like this is actually not too terrible looking. I don't think that it's worth a 4 mana rate. You know, compare this to other 4 mana cards in the format. It's not like Bristling Hydra, Hazaret, you know, it's not on the level. But if the merfolk deck needs the synergy with Cumena enough, it might go in. I'm just not holding my breath. Up next is Jade Light Ranger. I actually really like that name, but Jade Light Ranger is 3 mana, 1 and 2 green for a 2/1 merfolk scout with, when it enters the battlefield, it explores. Then it explores again. It's actually worded that way. I guess it like has to be worded that way. It just seems weird when you read it out loud. But anyway, this is a card I like a lot, actually. I'm a huge fan of this card. I think that it's really high variance, and that I don't like about it. You know, you really don't want to pay 3 mana for a 2/1. But in that case, it does draw you 2 lands. That seems good. And most of the time, I imagine that this will end up being either a 4/3 or a 3/2 that draws you a land, which is a really good rate. You know, I compare this to a Rogue Refiner, which is probably the better card, because Rogue Refiner essentially is this, but it already comes into play with a +1/+1 counter. You know, this is a 2/1, Refiner's a 3/2. And Rogue Refiner always straight up draws you a card and gets you another benefit, the 2 energy. So I think Refiner's better, but I think this compares at least somewhat favorably to something like Refiner. And it could go in like the mono-green Stompy deck, just a mono-green aggro deck. And of course it could go in the blue-green merfolk deck. You know, I'm not sure how many 3-drops that deck wants to play. It's going to play some Cumena, maybe 3 Cumena. You don't want to play all the Cumenas. But it's going to play 3 Cumena, maybe 1 or 2 Kapalas, especially 1 or 2 in the sideboard. So you probably have room for this 3-drop, but I don't know if you want to play all 4 copies. Again, I don't like the variance, but it's always going to do something. It's always going to get you card advantage, or it's going to be, you know, relatively big for its casting cost. I just like a lot of how this card shakes out. You know, if you get a 3 mana 4/3, that's not terrible, especially if you have tribal synergy going on. If you get a 3 mana 2/1, at least you drew 2 cards. And best case scenario, you draw a card and you get a 3/2. That's not terrible either, I think. So I just think, like, no matter what this card does, it's good. So I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of this. I like the design of it. And, by the way, in the Explorer decks, it's especially broken. You know, Shadowed Caraval gets 2 counters. Wild Growth Walker, Wild Growth Walker gets, you know, you get 6 life off of it, and it gets extra counters, too. It's just like, this card looks busted in Explorer. I mean, it's not going to make Explorer playable in Standard. Although, I will say that I've been playing Budget Explorer for a while now, and it's won me a bunch of games. It's done really well at FNMs and stuff, and you guys have told me that the Black-Green Explorer deck has done really well at FNM for you, and this slots directly in. This is a serious piece for that deck, so I mean, look out. It might go from budget to real. Who knows? But still, all I got to say is I'm a big, big fan of the design of this card. Next up is Cumena's Awakening. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for an enchantment with Ascend. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. If you have the City's Blessing, instead only you draw a card. Alright, so 4 mana Howling Mine that as soon as you trigger Ascend, only works for you for the rest of the game. That's actually not bad. I'm just not sure what plays it in this format. You know, obviously, there's a card meant for Commander, but EDH probably already has enough in the way of Howling Mines, you know. Although, maybe not. You know, if you really like this effect, then this is the card for you. But it's just not... like, I can't think of a single deck in Standard that would really, really want this right now. You know, control decks don't want to play a 4 mana sorcery speed enchantment to speed up their draws. And they're almost never going to hit Ascend until the very late game, so this probably isn't meant for them. It's probably not meant for combo decks, because combo decks have to combo off much faster than this card allows them to. It's just, it comes into play too late to have any real effect for a combo deck. Obviously aggro and even mid-range decks probably don't want this. I just don't know what wants this, which is crazy because this effect used to be really hype, back in the days. We'd see a card like this and just freak out, but I'm just not sure that anything in Standard actually wants this. Up next is Ravenous Chupacabra. It's 4 mana, that's 2 and 2 black for a 2/2 beast horror, with, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. What? Is that just me, or is that really good? Like, maybe playable in Standard good? Like, in Godfarer's Gift, right? The Esper Godfarer's Gift deck comes back as a 4/4 and kills something. That is very good, you guys. Like, this is, I also love that it's a playable Chupacabra, and they just brought back Necrotal. Like, this is just a, dare I say, better Necrotal, because Necrotal was just essentially like casting a Terror. If I remember Necrotal correctly, exactly right. But this is just any creature. Destroy any creature. So that's way better. It doesn't have first strike, but it does have an extra point of toughness. So I judge this as better than Necrotal. And that's just crazy in the Standard environment, especially a Standard environment with Scarab God and Godfarer's Gift. This card definitely looks like it could do something, is all I'm saying. I mean, I get probably some people are going to look at this and just write it off. Oh, it's a common. It's an uncommon. It's going to be really good and limited, and it is going to be really good and limited, yes. But I think this is maybe constructed playable in the specific environment that we're cultivating right now. This looks more than playable to me. Speaking of more than playable, this is one of my picks for today for, like, most playable card. We'll definitely see Standard play almost no matter what happens. This is Daring Buccaneer right here. It's just 1 red mana for a 2/2, so you know it's going to see play. It's a human pirate, and as an additional cost to cast it, you reveal a pirate card from your hand or pay 2. Alright, so first of all, this is confirmation that we're definitely going to get back this, like, Lorwyn type mechanic. We already saw Silvergill Adept, so we knew that we were going to have this to some extent, but hopefully it's with every single creature type. I just can't wait to see what they do with the Dinosaur or the Pirate one, all that, if they're doing it with every creature type. I think this is proof that they are, hopefully. But either way, this is just going to see all the play. I mean, maybe not immediately, maybe we have to wait for rotation, but I don't think so. I think that this immediately puts us into red in every Pirates deck in the format. We got to try it out, because this is an absolutely unbelievable red 1-drop. And by the way, this is something else that I almost called. I mean, mine was too good, but I basically just said in my Things I Want in Rivals of Ixalan video that I wanted a 1 red mana, 2 power pirate, and we have gotten it exactly. This is it right here. So it's almost never going to be worth paying the extra mana for, but you'll almost never have to pay the extra mana for it if you get it on turn 1 or turn 2 or whatever. So big, huge fan of this. It's going to definitely see play no matter what, 100%. Perhaps one of the best cards of the entire day. There's really not much else to say about it. 1 mana, 2 power cries are just playable. They're just playable. But here's one of my other favorite cards of the day. This is Legion Lieutenant right here. Oh, LL Cool J. He's a white and a black for a 2/2 Vampire Knight. With other vampires you control, get +1/+1. Now, being realistic, this has the same problems as the merfolk one. It says other vampires on it. It's susceptible to shock and magma spray and fatal push and a lot of different removal. If you swing in too carelessly, then you have the chance of getting blown out by a removal spell. So keep all of that in mind. It's all a consideration, but at the end of the day, we still got a 2 mana, 2/2 Lord for the vampire deck, and that's exactly what we wanted. I am not going to fuss about that. This card is going to see play definitely no matter what. This is not the thing that makes vampires immediately viable, especially white-black vampires. So far, the only vampire decks that have really seen Standard play are the mono-white vampires deck with a Catcher's Monument, and even the green-white deck that just plays a bunch of vampires. So we haven't actually seen black-white vampires make a splash in Standard, but this is going to put us well on the way, I would say. Even though it's susceptible to all that removal, I don't care. I still think this makes that deck way more playable than it previously was. Now, the next 3 cards I'm going to look over, full disclosure, I have not actually read yet. These actually just reloaded. I was just about to do the last card that they've spoiled so far today. So I reloaded the page, and they have put out 3 cards since I started recording this video that I have not actually read yet. So you're about to get very raw reactions to the next 3 cards. Just letting you know. Alright, so with that in mind, here's Induced Amnesia. This is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. When Induced Amnesia enters the battlefield, target player exiles all cards from his or her hand face down, then draws that many cards. When Induced Amnesia is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. Okay, so this is neat. You know, this is sort of a Tolarian Winds type card, where normally you discard your hand, then draw that many cards. In this case, you exile all the cards in your hand, draw that many cards, and you can get your old cards back if you can find a way to kill this enchantment. Problem is, if you had a way in your hand to deal with this enchantment, then that way is now exiled when you play this card. So, you know, maybe something like Thrashing Brontodon on the battlefield to kill this and get all your cards back, you know, thus netting you a buttload of cards. Like, that seems at least doable, but I'm not sure that this 3-mana enchantment is great. Although I will say that it does something. You know, it's a 3-mana enchantment that does something when it enters the battlefield. You wheel your hand. And wheeling your hand is decent. You know, getting a fresh 4, 5, 6 cards, that seems really good to me. So I'm not just going to write this off. You know, this is the first time I've ever even read the card. So obviously I'm not going to write it off just out of hand. Watch the next card be god-awful and I just write it off. But in any case, I think this could possibly be playable in the right list. But again, there's just like a couple of other cards today, there's going to have to be a very specific, awesome interaction for this to be real. But this is the kind of card that stinks of exactly that kind of interaction existing. Up next is Tilinali Summoner. I can already tell that this is a rough translation, so bear with me. It's 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/1 human with a Send. When Tilinali Summoner attacks, you may pay X and a red. If you do, create X 1/1 elemental creature tokens tapped and attacking. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step unless you have the city's blessing. Alright, so this might be good. This might actually be good. I don't usually like 2-mana 1/1s. But this one, you don't have to do all the work with to make it reasonable, you know? I think that if you play this on turn 2, and then turn 3, you could theoretically get, you know, 2 guys attacking. But it's very likely that Tilinali is going to die. That's the thing, is that you probably either have to protect Tilinali herself when she attacks, because you only get to do this when she attacks. So it's very likely that you're only going to be able to do this one time if your opponent even has like a 1-power thing to block it with. So there is that. If you have a Send, you get to keep all those dudes. So this looks like a really, really good late-game top deck, right? You know, if you already have a Send, you get this late. Although I will say you have to wait until the next turn. It's not like it has haste. You have to wait until the next turn to actually get all those tokens. I don't know, maybe I'm talking myself out of it. But even if you get one swing in where you have, you know, I don't know, 6 mana that you could use on it, then that's pretty good. You know, you get a bunch of 1/1s. And there are definitely situations where even if you don't get to keep all those tokens, then it's probably a fine deal, you know? Like, I think there's probably combo potential here, too. You know, a deck that somehow gives its Tilinali haste and just makes all the mana and just swings in for 1,000,000, you know, all at once, that's probably a possibility. So maybe, you know, and I keep calling it Tilinali. Obviously, it's Tilinali Summoner. And not Tilinali yourself, but still. Flavor people. But in any case, lore folk. But in any case, I think that I like the cut of the card's jib, but ultimately it might just be bargain bin, but there's so many neat things that you could probably do with this that I'm not going to count it out. This possibility. I don't really see it having any like synergy or anything in standard. But, you know, in the right deck, this could be your entire game plan. And it seems like a decent top deck late if you can get around to, you know, losing summoning sickness. You know, this could be really serious in a board stall on turn 8. You know what I mean? But we'll see. We'll see. I'm not ready to say this card is bad, but I'm not ready to say this card is good either. Up next is Admiral's Order right here. It's 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for an instant. With Raid, if you attack with a creature this turn, you may pay blue rather than play this spell's mana cost. A counter-target spell. Huh. Alright. I bet it's super fun to hear me just read cards for the first time, because like, that's the first time I've read through that, actually. I had no idea what that did until I got to counter-target spell. This seems very good. Seems very good, you know. At its worst, it's a cancel on your opponent's turn, which is you know, not bad. It's not disallowed, but it's not bad. And in like tempo blue decks, you know, the Pirates deck or even the Merfolk deck, this looks like a really, really good answer to something like Settle the Wreckage. That looks like the answer to Settle the Wreckage, actually, in this block. So I love that. And it's probably, you know, I've been talking about you could get blown out. You know, I've said that 3 or 4 times this video. With these like Merfolk Lords and the Vampire Lord. Obviously, I don't think this applies to the Vampire Lord, but with the Merfolk Lord, this is a way to not get blown out. You know, if you swing in, attack with everything, then and they try to fatal push your Lord, then boom, you know, you've attacked. At that point, you've attacked with the creatures. So you just pay 1 blue mana for this encounter. Their fatal push, their any targeted removal, or for that matter, their Settle the Wreckage, which is just insane. So I like this an awful lot. This could definitely make the sideboard of any aggressive deck with blue, including possibly modern decks, for that matter. I think the floor is too low for modern, but that ceiling is really, really, really high in modern too. So I won't say that this couldn't see, you know, play in Fish in other formats. But it's definitely could see play in Standard Fish. I mean, that deck is already running a ton of spells, and I'm not really sure what else it has the room for, but this will definitely at least make it into the sideboard. And of course, I just read the card for the first time, so I can't say it'll definitely do anything first time evaluating it. But just because it's an answer to Settle the Wreckage, I think it's probably going to make a lot of standard boards. Hey everybody, editing dev breaking in again here. I try not to do this too often, but you'll probably hear a lot from me this week. Because, you know, Wizards likes to release cards like when I'm almost done editing. So today they released Huatli the Primal Storm as I was finishing up editing, and I wanted this to be in the video. So Huatli is 6 mana, 4/2 red for a 6/6 legendary Elder Dinosaur. And whenever it attacks, you exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. Just first impressions on this, I think it's really high variance. You know, it looks pretty hilarious in EDH, where you've got, you know, 3 players that you can play their cards from their decks. That seems nice. But in Standard, this is just another huge red 6 mana creature that is way too high variance to really see any actual play. You know, another good one is the red Gear Hulk, you know, Combustible Gear Hulk. That's probably a better card than this for 6 mana, and it doesn't see any play because of its ridiculous amount of variance. I think this is the exact same way. I mean, this is going to be a 6 mana 6/6 that sometimes never gets you an extra card. You just rip lands, you know, the 2 times it attacks. So I think as far as all the Elder Dinosaurs, this looks to be the weakest one we've seen so far, at least to my mind. And for now, this is the last card of the day. This is Huatli Radiant Champion. It's 4 mana, 2, a green, and a white for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. You can +1 her to put a loyalty counter on her for each creature you control. You can -1 her to have target creature get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And you can -8 her to get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, you may draw a card. I probably don't like this. You know, I've had most of the day since I woke up a few hours ago, a couple hours ago at this point, to look at this card, and I'm still not sure I liked it. One thing that would have been way off flavor, especially for the colors the card is, but when I first looked at the card, I thought that -1 ability gave a creature -X/-X until end of turn for each creature you controlled, at which point I really loved the card, but, you know, then I reread it and I was like, oh, this is not great. You know, it doesn't protect itself very well, especially considering it requires you to have a bunch of creatures out in order for it to be a good card at all, which is, honestly, historically, that's bad. Needing a bunch of creatures out is not great unless your name is Kithion or Ketra. And, you know, this could go in, like, the green-white aggro deck that's been, like, firmly, you know, middle tier 2 for the last 4 to 6 months. It could go in that deck, but I'm still not sure about it, you know? Like an Anointed Procession deck, for instance, looks like it probably wants this. It's going to have a bunch of creatures out at any given time, but Anointed Procession costs 4, and this costs 4. How many 4-drops do you really want to run? You know, you want to run all 4 APs, so that brings you down to like 2 copies of Huatli if you even want to play it. And this doesn't work. This doesn't play well with Anointed Procession in a couple of ways. Like, you know, you want to play creature, Huatli on turn 4. If you play Anointed Procession instead, well, you skipped playing a creature, so that doesn't benefit your Huatli. And, you know, you want Anointed Procession to do something before you play your Huatli, so, You play Anointed Procession turn 4, you want to do something with the Procession on turn 5, like Sram's Expertise, Servo Exhibition, something. So you don't even get to Huatli until like turn 6, and at that point, is it even worth it? You know what I mean? I just don't know how good this card is in Standard. In Commander, decks that make a bunch of tokens and stuff and have all day to do it, this is probably playable. This is probably good enough, but you know, it doesn't pass a whole lot of the tests that Planeswalkers have to pass. You know, it doesn't protect itself very well. Unless it's already got a bunch of creatures on the battlefield to help protect it, it doesn't protect itself at all. You know, it takes forever to get to the ultimate. The ultimate actually isn't even that incredible. I mean, it could be. It has the potential to be. But it's not. It doesn't say you win the game on it, which an ultimate really should. For the most part, you should essentially win the game if you spend 5 turns, you know, getting to an ultimate. And you know, the plus X ability is probably just decent, but that's it. I mean, I sort of think that this kind of looks like a Planeswalker pack Planeswalker that just, you know, instead of costing 5 or 6 mana, it only costs 4. So ultimately, I don't like it. You know, it doesn't remove creatures. It doesn't really protect itself well unless you already have a bunch of creatures to protect it. And even the ultimate is just okay. So, you know, I like the first Huatli better than this, and that Huatli hasn't seen any play. So I don't see it. I don't see it. If you really like the card, let me know what I'm missing in the comments section, but I'm not a huge fan. And that is it. After an hour and a half of recording, that is it for today. At least for now. Who knows? Wizards might try to kick out a bunch of weird cards at the end of the night. And if they do, I'll try to get back on the camera for you. But for now, what's done is done, and what's fun is fun. So make sure you get at me in the comments section. Let me know how wrong I am on all these cards, or how right I am. I mean, I'm down for hearing that. You know, that's fine. I don't want to just be an echo chamber. Let me know if I'm wrong on some of these, or if there's any interactions that I missed that you want to point out to everybody. Now's the time to do that. Spoiler season is an important time to share all of our combos and interactions and how much we like these new cards. So do all that in the comments section, and you can also like the video if you enjoyed the video. I hope you did. I really hope you did. So like it if you want to. You can also sub if you're new. Hit the bell for the notifications. These spoiler videos are going to be coming out all week. And I've got an exclusive Rivals of Ixalan spoiler on Thursday, so mark your calendar. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev. Support me on Patreon if you really feel like it at patreon.com/SBMTG. That'd be much appreciated. You can also support the channel by clicking on the first link in the description and checking out my sponsor, TCG Player. They help bring you content, so they must be decent people. And you can get boxes of Rivals on pre-order for like a $10 discount from them right now. But anyway, pretty sure I'm tapped out for this one, so I will catch you cats later. I've been Dev from The Place as always. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.
You ain't never had a friend like me. You ain't never had a friend like me.